One summer when I was in high school, my family and I decided to take a trip to Mexico, where we would be staying at a resort. I had never been out of the country before and was completely ecstatic about the trip. When our plane landed, we used a rental car to drive directly to the resort. As soon as we got there, I was beyond impressed by how beautiful everything was. The water was super clear and a pretty deep blue color. There were enormous palm trees everywhere, hammocks that hung over the water, and lots of colorful flowers, unlike any that I had ever seen before. The first day of the vacation was amazing. My family and I hung out by the water all day, eating delicious meals, swimming, and sunbathing. That evening, my parents and my younger brothers were tired after a long day outside and wanted to hang out in our room and watch television. But there was a gorgeous sunset that night, and I really wanted to get a picture of how it looked over the water. I convinced my parents to let me go down to the water by myself, promising them that I would be gone no more than 15 minutes. I headed down to the deck area with just my phone on me. There were a few people here and there sitting by the water and enjoying some drinks, but it was mostly pretty quiet. I found a good spot and raised my phone to snap a pic. Just as I was doing so, I felt one arm being placed around my waist while a large hand was placed over my mouth. I tried to scream, but it was stifled. I couldn't get a look at my attacker as I struggled against him. He was 2 times my size and incredibly strong. He roughly led me to a nearby supply closet, which was nearly completely dark. He put duct tape over my mouth and bound my arms together with some rope. He then whispered that he would be coming back for me later and told me if I tried to escape, he would kill me. He then left the room, locking the door behind him, so I couldn't get out. This was my worst nightmare. I tried to force myself to stop panicking and focus how I was going to get out. Surely my parents would get worried when I didn't come back and would come looking for me. But what if they didn't find me in time? What was the man going to do to me? I would be no match for his strength. Even though my arms were bound, I could still walk around the small closet and try to find something to free myself. The first thing that caught my eye was a rusty nail that was slightly sticking out of the door. I reached my arms up and began desperately dragging the ropes against the nail, causing the ropes to fray. After doing this for several minutes, the ropes were frayed enough that I was able to get them off of me. I then pulled the duct tape off of my mouth and began screaming for help at the top of my lungs. The door finally opened, and I was shocked to see my dad standing there, looking very concerned and confused. I jumped into his arms, sobbing so hard that I could barely explain what happened to me. After we got back to our room, my parents called the authorities, but because I hadn't gotten a look at my captor, there wasn't much that could be done. We ended up cutting our trip short and flying back home the very next day. When I was young, one of my favorite things to do during the summer was to get ice cream from the ice cream truck. I loved hearing the familiar music that they would play and sprinting outside as fast as I could to stop the truck before they drove away. One hot day, I was sitting in my room reading a book with the window open. All of a sudden, I heard a familiar tune, Pop Goes the Weasel. I jumped up and looked out the window just in time to see the ice cream truck going by. It was going at the same slow speed that the normal ice cream truck would usually go, and playing the same song, but I couldn't see any of the pictures of the different ice cream options or the prices. I figured the pictures were just probably on the other side. I grabbed a few bucks and ran outside to see if I could catch it, but sadly it had turned the corner down a different street by the time I got outside. I decided not to chase after it and to just wait till it came around again. Several days went by and I didn't hear the ice cream truck. One evening, I decided to meet my friend Jenny at the park that was located near the entrance of our neighborhood. We were in a safe area and my parents knew all of our neighbors, so they were comfortable with me going out to play on my own as long as I didn't leave the neighborhood and got home before the streetlights turned on. I was walking down the sidewalk, bouncing a tennis ball against the ground and minding my own business when I saw a van parked alongside the sidewalk a short distance ahead of me. I noticed that it looked very similar to the one I saw earlier this week that had been playing the ice cream truck music. As I got closer, I could see that there were no pictures of ice cream on either side of the van. This was clearly not a real ice cream truck, so I figured it was just a van that kind of looked like one that had come by before. But as I walked by the van, I was surprised when it began to play Pop the Weasel again, and began moving slowly further. A bad feeling settled in my stomach, and I got the sense that I was being followed. I began to speed up my pace, but the van only continued to follow me. I then began sprinting, but the van just began moving faster. Right when I was about to turn the corner down the street where the playground was, the van slammed to a halt, and both the driver's side of the door and the back seat door sprang open. A man jumped out and sprinted towards me. He grabbed me, picked me up easily, and then began dragging me towards the van. I was doing everything I possibly could to get away. I was thrashing around, screaming, and attempting to bite the man. I knew that if he got me into the van, that was going to be it for me. I would never see my family again. Suddenly, I heard a gunshot ring out, and the next thing I knew, I was laying on the ground. I looked up, and Jenny's dad was standing right in front of me, a shotgun in his hands and a look of rage in his eyes. I rolled over and saw the man who had tried to kidnap me, writhing in pain, a bullet wound in his left leg. Jenny's mom heard the commotion and rushed out of the house towards me. She pulled me off the ground and took me into her house, where she called the police and then my parents. There were scrapes on my arms and legs, and I was of course traumatized, but mostly unharmed. Jenny's dad stood over the man until the police got there and took my would-be kidnapper away forever. One summer when I was still in elementary school, my mom took me and my little brother to this outdoor water park that was near our house. There were water slides, a lazy river, and a splash pad area. It was one of my most favorite places to go, and we went there frequently every summer. When we arrived, I remember noticing the packed parking lot and being disappointed that it was so crowded. I knew this would mean longer wait times for the water slides. After paying, we walked into the water park and went to find a seat. My mom was putting sunscreen on my younger brother, but I was so excited to go on one of the water slides that I asked if I could go ahead. She told me that I could, and she would catch up with me soon. I took off running, eager to claim my place in line. The wait was probably around 15 minutes until it was my turn to go. It was just as fun as ever, and I can still remember the exhilarating feeling of gliding down the slide so quickly and flying into the pool at the end. When I climbed out of the pool, I realized it had been a while since I checked back with my mom. I decided to go back over to the pool area where our seats were. Just as I was turning to leave the water slide area, some woman I didn't recognize came up to me. She asked me if my name was Claire. I nodded, really confused. She told me that there had been an accident and my little brother was hurt. She said that my mom had asked her to go get me. Without thinking twice, I followed the woman through the crowds all the way to the back exit of the water park where the fence was. When I looked through the fence, I saw a white van parked right outside with all the doors open. A buff man wearing sunglasses and a black hoodie was standing outside as if he was waiting for someone. Just as I was about to walk out, I heard my name being called out. I spun around and saw my mom standing there. My little brother was right next to her, completely unharmed. When the woman saw my mother, both she and the man sprinted to the van and sped off. My mom told the front desk at the water park what had happened, and the police came only minutes later. The water park was searched and then later evacuated and closed for the day. I had to sit with the police for what felt like ages as I explained what had happened. It has been many years since this incident, and to my knowledge, the man and the woman were never caught. I hate to think what would have happened if I got into the van that day.